You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. In the United States, local, state, and federal governments spend billions of dollars on the so-called war on drugs. Increasingly, people from a wide variety of perspectives question the effectiveness of that war and call for greater creativity in both strategy and tactics. One local response to that call for creativity occurred in 1995 with the founding of the Hamilton County Drug Court. On December 31st, after 5 years of service as the drug court's one and only judge, Deidra retired. 12 News reporter Jeff Hirsch was in drug court for Judge Hare's last official day on the bench.
Main City Court's in session.
She dispensed justice for 20 years, first on municipal court and then since 1995 as judge on Hamilton County's drug court.
I can see change. I'm involved in change. And as a regular judge, all you see are failures.
Drug court gives non-violent addicts a chance and a choice.
And you know this is it. There isn't anything else but the penitentiary. Where people realize their lives are over if they don't get help, that they're going to literally die from the addiction or have no family or friends left in the world. If they're at a point that they know it's over, that's where we can make a difference.
Drug court offers intensive, supervised treatment. It may sound simple, it's not.
Well, it's a much more stringent program than you'd see in a jail. It's very easy to do a jail sentence if you're an addict. And people in that situation will tell you that. Many people come here and say, give me jail. I don't want the kind of supervision that I will see in drug court. Big time problem.
But for those who accept drug court, it can work. Judge Hare says 90% of the 700 people who have completed the program so far, completion which can take years, have not been rearrested for felonies.
To discuss the experience of the drug court over the last 5 years and its future, I am joined by two people. This morning, I am joined by retired Judge Deidra Hare, the founding drug court judge. In addition, we are joined by Hamilton County Commissioner John Dowlin, who Judge Hare describes as the court's most important political supporter over the years. Welcome to Newsmakers. John, welcome back.
Yes.
One thing I want to clarify, because of taping as we are now, and this is going to air a week later, that you did technically retire on the 31st, but you've told me that you're still there.
I'm a visiting judge at this point until a replacement is appointed by Governor Taft.
Okay. Let's talk about drug court. I think all of us have read about it, but haven't necessarily been in it. I've never been there to observe what goes on. What's the goal of drug court?
Goal of drug court is to try to catch people in active addiction who continually come into the criminal justice system on new charge after new charge, and to interrupt that pattern with treatment and very stringent monitoring through probation. The difference between a drug court and a normal court is that the judge and the prosecutor and the treatment team and the public defender all play very different roles than you would see in a normal courtroom. We actually meet with the defendant off-site, and we meet as a team with team recommendations. We monitor progress in treatment very carefully. We do very frequent random urinalysis so that if there is a relapse, we know it almost immediately, and we can have an immediate consequence to that behavior, because the prime tenet of any drug court is that relapse is a part of recovery. And if you can't understand that concept, you'll never understand a drug court.
Explain that to me. Clarify what you mean by that. Relapse is a part of recovery. You expect people to relapse?
We expect people to relapse because that's what addiction is about. If you don't know that or don't know to look for that, you won't have a clue of how to deal with any addict.
But there is some point at which so many relapses, I mean, the drug court is one way of dealing with things and trying to get treatment. A person who continually relapses can end up back in the regular court or get a sentence by you to the penitentiary?
They would get a sentence to the penitentiary.
Okay, so...
But what we do in drug courts nationally, it's part of the definition of a drug court. Instead of the big slam when you have a failure, go right now, probation violation to the penitentiary, we do incremental sanctions. So if you, 2 weeks into treatment programming, go out and get drunk, we're going to know it. We'll have you back on the docket almost instantly, and you will go to jail a couple days. We want to get your attention. We want to train you and give you the tools of how to deal with those cravings, how to deal with them differently than you ever have. Get a sponsor in AA, for example. Get a sponsor in NA. You have a counselor, you have a probation officer, you have a judge, you have a lawyer. Everybody is trained to help you get through that pattern of relapse.
You mentioned AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Then you mentioned NA.
Narcotics Anonymous.
Narcotics Anonymous, okay. John, you were instrumental in helping get the court started.
That's correct.
What was the inspiration? Was this happening in other places as well? Did you have models to follow? What was the inspiration for doing this?
We had heard, actually through Todd Portune and Tyrone Yates, of the example of Miami, Florida, which interested me, and we then got the Chief Justice Moyer interested. We had statewide meetings on this, how to proceed. We visited various courts, and we got his support. I would say, from my standpoint, the purpose of drug court is to transform lives from people who are abusing their families, who are eating the taxpayers' money at $65 a day, into something where they are tax-paying citizens. They are not abusing their families. They're paying taxes, and they have a job, that type of thing.
When you say $65 a day, that's the cost of having someone in jail?
In jail, and it's more than that in prison. You know, so I don't even know what exactly what that cost is. And it costs less, it takes up fewer beds, and it transforms their lives. And personally, I don't know how people have known this, but I've had 3 people come up to me who are in the drug court and are graduating and say, "Thank you, you saved my life." And how much better can it be than that? And the other thing, let me just say, is I attend as many graduations as I can. One of the speakers was a very attractive young woman who was nicely dressed, and her hair was beautiful, and she was making her talk, and she had a poster board behind her. And then finally she said, "I thought you'd like to see the blow up of my mugshot when I was arrested." And here is this ugly, ugly person, disheveled, you know, and the transformation into this beautiful young woman was so lovely.
So there are literally graduations that people graduate, and you can go, those are public.
We have public graduations. We don't have room for the public, to be honest with you. We generally graduate 50 to 70 people, men and women, and the room will be full of 300 to 400 people because their families are there. This is the first accomplishment for many of them in their entire life.
You know, John was just saying that for him, people walking up and saying thank you, sort of that individual response, is the way he knows something good is working. For you, when you look at these 5 years, what do you look to evaluate whether this is working or not? Is it statistics? Is it anecdotal evidence? What is it that you look to?
I look at statistics, but I also look at people. I mean, this is a very individualized court. You really know the clients in this court. You know their families, you know their children, you know their grandparents. They are all, by the time it's over, they're all involved in the programming itself. We look at that support system as very important to people in recovery. So I know everybody. By the time there's a graduation, it's a big party.
It is a big party, and they cheer and they whistle and they hug the judge and they hug each other, and it's wonderful.
Let's talk a little bit about the statistics, and Jeff used some of those real quick. Over the last 5 years, approximately round numbers, how many different people have come before you in drug court?
Well, That's a complicated question. I've handled about 5,500 cases, but in that group, not all of them were in the treatment group of drug court. In
Let's
other
talk
words,
about
they
the
were
treatment part.
simply normal cases.
Okay, let's talk about the treatment part.
Total numbers, I don't know that have come in front of me. I can tell you graduate numbers.
What about graduate?
As of December 7th, there were 701 graduates.
Okay. Now, for a person who coming into your court and it's judged that treatment is the right approach, what sort of options are out there in the community, and to really, what sort of agencies, and some of these I'm sure are agencies sponsored by Hamilton County itself, but what is the array of organizations out there to help people in this situation? We
have our general partners with the Talbert House, and we also use CCHB, CCAT, First Step Home, Prospect House, the SAMI program. We use any available appropriate treatment. We are probably the luckiest drug court in the country because we have our own inpatient facility. It's basically a drug rehab hospital, which is located at the Addis Center for men. There are 47 beds there for men. They
and where
stay,
is that?
The Old Rollman's Hospital.
The old, okay. And what's it now called?
It's the Addis Center.
Addis.
And that will house 47 men for 90 days inpatient. That's followed in our programming by intensive outpatient. To graduate, you have to have 12 to 15 months absolutely clean with no dirty urines. And sometimes that'll take people 3 years to do.
Okay, so
it's a rotating process. We have a program also inpatient for women and their preschool children, because one of the clear things that occurs in addiction is the children are abandoned. Often the women have charges of child endangering, which amounted to them going to the crack house for 3 days. And the children were left basically alone.
John, these are the array of programming out there. Is there enough? Are there enough beds? Are there enough services out there in our county to respond to the need?
Particularly, there's not enough services for women. And there is a federal law and regulation that limits that to 16 beds. I've been working very closely with Rob Portman to change that federal law.
What do you mean? There's a federal law that limits it to 16 beds.
That's right.
Why?
Because then the provider and as well as the client lose their Medicare and Medicaid benefits. So not only the client loses the benefit, but Talbert House would lose the benefits. And this is all tied up in going all the way back to Lyndon Johnson's days, where the thought was that alcohol and drug addiction was the same as mental illness, and the federal government was not involved in mental illness. But we now take the stand that those are separate issues, and we have a separate mental health board and a separate alcohol and drug addictions services board, and so we're just way behind the times. I'm confident that with Rob Portman's help, that is going to change. There are more beds available for women if we just have the ability to fund them. But you know, the other thing I'd like to say is that the recidivism rate is 10%. We knew...
Now, this is counting recidivism after there's been the 18 months of clean urine. Is that what you're counting?
What we looked at, and I was simply told to do this by people who do it, I'm not a statistician, but you look at re-arrest rates or reconviction rates for a felony after graduation. Now, statistically important data is not going to come from a December 7th graduation, but going back 5 years, the statistics have held up to be between 89–90% not re-arrested, much less convicted. We just looked at the arrest because that's a cost factor.
I cut you off. I didn't mean to do that.
When we got involved with this, we took a business-like approach. We did a sampling of the people in our jail, and 75% of them were there because of drug and alcohol addiction. We did another sampling, and we found that the re-arrest rate for those people after they completed their sentence was 75%. So now we go into this program, and the rearrest rate is 9 or 10%. And so we're saving the taxpayers' money, and we're making these productive citizens of the United States, and we're reestablishing families.
One of the things, now that you're going to retire at some point here when a new judge is appointed, and that comes from the governor, am I correct, that appointment? One of the things, as you describe this, I mean, all judges face tough workloads, I know that, but it sounds to me like because you're involved on such a personal level with this team and the counseling, there's a lot of work here and I know this is a softball question, and I know you've raised this question, is one judge, one drug court enough for Hamilton County?
Absolutely not, and it's a matter of money. If you think of it like this, with 15 judges hearing drug cases, none of us as lawyers were ever trained about chemical dependency. We don't know anything. Now, this would be the functional equivalent of saying we're going to let certified plumbers run the ER. And if I see you in my courtroom and I say, well, gee, your wound looks terrible, I want you to have that bed. Right down the hall, another untrained individual is going to say, well, your wound looks much worse to me than what I've seen today, so you get that bed. We have very limited treatment resources, and we need to triage those cases in a central location. Take all the drug cases and say, I have 20 beds, I know your problem is 20 years of addiction, you have cirrhosis, you get the bed. Yeah. You've got to stop or you're going to die.
I'm aware of time, and we're really out of time. Is there the chance of expanding the number of drug courts? I mean, it's a practical.
Well, I would say it is not a question of money as far as the Board of County Commissioners are concerned. It's a question of the judicial agreeing to that. Okay. And so I might differ from what Deidra is saying. The money is there because of the Board of County Commissioners, if it is justified and allowed to happen by the judiciary.
Okay.
Let me correct that. I didn't mean to say the money from the commissioners. Yeah. It's the treatment dollars that I'm talking about, and when they're limited, they need to be used very wisely.
Okay. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for your work over the past 5 years. Good luck with retirement when it starts, and I'm sure that's going to be active. And John, I'm sure you're going to be back as you always are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, the new director of Cincinnati's homegrown third party. Welcome back. During the recent presidential election, millions of people wished aloud that America had a viable multi-party rather than a two-party system. About 8% of the voters turned their backs on the candidates of the two major parties to cast ballots for the candidates of the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the Reform Party, the Natural Law Party, the Socialist Party, so on and so on. Here in Cincinnati, we have not only had a multi-party system for over 75 years, but a third party that has been able to elect people to local office. I am joined this morning by the new executive director of the Charter Committee, Jeff Craemerding. Jeff, welcome to Newsmakers.
And glad to be here.
Gee, Jeff, you and I were just talking this before we got started, and I did this all as, set this up as Charter as a third party. What do you think about that introduction?
Well, Dan, we're not a party. We're the Charter Committee of Greater Cincinnati. That's important because people tend to ask, are you a Charterite or a Republican, a Charterite or a Democrat? In actuality, Charter is a coalition of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, all working together for the betterment of Cincinnati. So somebody can be a Charterite and a good Republican, and there's many that are. So we're not really a third party.
Or a Charterite and a good Democrat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, historically, there were more Republicans, but I'd say in recent years, you might even find more Democrats. But I wouldn't want to get into that.
We've gone back and forth both ways.
Right. But then, given that, how important is it for you to be able to elect people who identify themselves as charterites to Cincinnati City Council? Because right now there's only one left, Jim Tarbell. How important is it, if you're not really a party, to maintain the ability to actually elect people?
It's extremely important, because the thing that separates Charter from a group like Cincinnatus, which is another good government organization,
Which is closely related to Charter historically.
very closely. But Charter is an inherently political organization. It's very important for us to be at the table. Charter preserves good government, but to do that, we need to be able to do the dirty tricks that the other two parties do. So sometimes we wear the black hats, and it's important for an organization that preserves good government to be able to do that.
Okay. So you've got to be able to wield some power to make some deals, to be at the table when the deal is made. Given that, will Charter run a significant slate this coming year for council, or will, the emphasis be on Jim Tarbell?
Mr. Tarbell will run again, but no, I foresee us having several challenger candidates, and it's possible that we can endorse Republicans and Democrats as we've done in the past.
Now, I know one of the things that you have said since you came on as executive director is that the Charter wants to begin dealing, or not begin, but deal with issues that are countywide. What are those particularly? What are you trying to focus on there?
So many of the issues now are regional in scale: transportation, environment, brownfields, urban sprawl. To tackle these problems, we've found that we really have to spread beyond the city of Cincinnati and work with the townships, the villages, and even counties beyond Hamilton County.
Practically speaking, I mean, knowing a bit about the history of Charter, that's not new. Charter, from the very beginning, said we're going to start, once Charter cleaned up city government, the focus shifted almost immediately with Charlie Taft over to the county courthouse. So there's nothing new about this. What specifically do you imagine yourself doing, not you as an individual, but Charter as an organization, on these regional issues?
I think Charter has a big role to play in the outlying townships and municipalities. I mean, if you read the news lately, so many of them have run into problems. Fairfield had the scandal with John Saylor. Silverton's had some financial problems. Norwood, the mayor was just indicted. The list goes on and on. There's a lot of independent people in these outlying townships and villages that know that something's not right. Charter can come in and provide the expertise, give these people the guidance to find out what's wrong with their particular area.
You know, a lot of times I think Charter is sort of perceived as the Cincinnati equivalent of the Mexican, permanent independent revolutionary party, or whatever the whatever it is, that is always the revolutionary party. But what you've become is just holding on to what was created 20 years ago, sort of a rearguard action to protect the city manager form of government. Is Charter capable, as you move out to these other communities where maybe that form of government isn't what people want, of talking about other forms of government, of talking about other types of reforms that maybe are necessary in the 21st century?
Well, Charter has looked at change. In this past year, Charter supported Issue 4, which was the stronger mayor system, and that was a break, and a lot of people were very surprised that Charter did that. Charter was innovative in the 1920s when they instituted the city manager system. We have to keep being innovative and keep looking at new ideas. I mean, research is a big part of what Charter does.
The other thing that you frequently hear about Charter, I hear about Charter, is, gee, a lot of older people, and if you're going to survive, you need to recruit people. In fact, the historic record says that was being said all the way back to the 1960s. What are you going to be able to do as executive director to help recruit new blood into the party?
That was the
into
reason,
the committee.
Into the committee. That was the reason I was hired. I was hired to bring in young people. That's my primary goal. And I think you're seeing young people that are getting involved in civic affairs. They want to be involved in their community. They're already Charterites. They just have to be shown the way. And they will.
They're already Charterites.
They're already Charterites. I mean, you see so many young people talking about nonpartisanship, moving the city forward, using terms that Charter's used for 50 years now. So I think they're out there.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the old images of Charter is there isn't a Republican or a Democratic way to fix a pothole.
Right.
There's just an efficient and effective way and inefficient and wasteful way. So, people can be interested no matter, and be nonpartisan on local issues particularly. Jeff, thank you. I was anxious to get you on here as soon as you were appointed, and good luck with the job, and I hope to see you back on Newsmakers in the future.
Thank you, Dan. I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Have a good week.